Welcome to the deep dive. When we look for people with real influence, we often think about those big historical moments, right?
Yeah, the dramatic speech in a crisis, the leader who rallies the nation, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But what if that power, that real influence, isn't just about having the right words at the right time? What if it's built on something? Well, something deeper, something more fundamental.
That's really the core question we're tackling today. We're doing a deep dive into what actually makes influence stick, looking at principles that have held up for centuries.
And our sources are pretty wide-ranging for this one.
They really are. We've got the classical heavy hitters, Aristotle, Cicero, Quintilian, but we're also pulling in modern psychology, thinkers like Kahneman, leadership experts like Covey, even researchers like Brené Brown.
So the mission here is to kind of peel back the layers, move beyond just the tricks of rhetoric, the techniques, and really analyze the anatomy of persuasion itself.
We want to understand the difference between just putting on a good show and having that genuine, character-driven influence. What skills do you absolutely need?
And crucially, what kind of person do you need to be to wield that influence effectively and maybe ethically?
And, the natural starting point, the benchmark for so much of this discussion through history is the Athenian orator Demosthenes. He really set the standard.
Yeah, Cicero, himself a giant of Roman oratory, basically pointed to Demosthenes and said, that's the guy. He said Demosthenes had summa visticendi.
Which sounds impressive. What does it translate to, roughly?
It's something like the greatest force of speaking. It implies this incredible power and authority in how he spoke. For Cicero, Demosthenes was the absolute model, especially for speaking in times of crisis.
And Quintilian, another Roman rhetorician, he took it even further, didn't he? Calling him a perfect orator.
He did. But what's really fascinating and central to our deep dive, I think, is how Quintilian thought Demosthenes got there.
Right. It wasn't just raw talent dropped from the sky. Quintilian emphasizes this study and labor involved, intense work.
He even mentions overcoming impedimenta natural impediments. Things like maybe a weak voice or a stammer or stage fright. We don't know the specifics, but the point is clear.
Yeah, the greatest force wasn't just given, it was earned, forged, really, through discipline and relentless practice.
That sets a pretty high bar, doesn't it? Suggests even natural talent needs serious grinding work. But Quintilian uses Demosthenes for more than just an example of skill, right?
Oh, absolutely. He brings in the ethical dimension straight away. He defends Demosthenes against critics by pointing to his noblest public policy, warning Athens about Philip of Macedon, trying to wake them up.
And his most glorious end. Quintilian uses him to pose that fundamental question, does the orator have to be a good person?
Exactly. By holding up Demosthenes as this perfect and moral example, Quintilian is arguing that true greatness in speech isn't just about technique, it's about the speaker's purpose, their moral compass, what they're actually trying to achieve for the community. It's not just about getting applause.
Okay, so let's dig into that foundational tension, the skill versus the virtue, or maybe skill versus knowledge. If we go right back to the basics of persuasion, the ancients were really divided on this, weren't they? Is it a real art, like a science with predictable rules, or just a kind of clever knack?
That's the philosophical heart of the matter, yeah. And Plato, using Socrates as his mouthpiece in the Dialogue Gorgias, really throws down the gauntlet.
He was going after the sophists, right?
Yeah.
People like Gorgias, who basically taught persuasion as a tool to win any argument, regardless of truth.
Precisely. Plato's critique is that the sophist's brand of oratory relies on creating conviction based purely on belief. And belief, well, it can be true or it can be false. It's unstable.
As opposed to conviction based on actual knowledge. If I convince you based on knowledge, the thing you're convinced of must be true. But belief is slippery. I could just be playing on your biases.
And that distinction is everything. It leads Socrates to that really provocative paradox about power. He argues that the orator, if they're just manipulating beliefs to win, might actually be one of the least powerful people in the city.
How does that work? It seems counterintuitive. Winning arguments usually looks like power.
Well, Socrates qualifies it. They are least powerful if power means achieving something genuinely good for the person holding it.
Okay. So if winning involves compromising your own integrity or leading your society down a harmful path, maybe you've gained influence, but you haven't gained real power in the Socratic sense. You've actually damaged yourself and maybe everyone else.
Exactly. You've lost something vital. It forces you, if you want influence, to judge your success, not just by the immediate win, but by the long-term moral impact. Are you building up or tearing down?
That's a heavy responsibility. Okay, so that's the philosophical critique. But then you have Aristotle, who, while acknowledging the importance of virtue, also gets very practical about the mechanics, right? He lays out the how-to.
Right. Aristotle's rhetoric is like the technical manual. He accepts you need the skill, the technique, but ideally guided by good purpose. And he insists that speech needs effective performance.
Performance meaning, like how you sound.
Pretty much.
All right.
He talks about paying attention to melodiousness, varying your pitch rhythm, and loudness. But it's not just about sounding pleasant.
What's the goal then?
It's about conveying feeling effectively, accessing pathos, the emotional connection. Melodiousness stops you sounding boring or droning. Rhythm keeps the audience engaged, but it shouldn't be too metrical or it sounds fake, like reciting bad poetry.
Okay, so the delivery has to serve the message. It should be engaging but not distracting, making sure it causes no annoyance, as he put it.
Exactly. If your delivery's off, you're mumbling, or you sound robotic, or you're fidgeting people. Tune out the message itself, no matter how logical it is. The noise of the bad delivery drowns it out.
Makes sense. And beyond how you say it, Aristotle puts huge emphasis on the words themselves, particularly metaphor.
Oh, absolutely. He calls metaphor the most powerful element in speech. Why? Because it brings clarity, it gives pleasure, we enjoy a good comparison, and it introduces that element of unfamiliarity, something novel that snaps the audience to attention.
It makes the abstract tangible, right? But he also warns it has to be used correctly. It has to be fitting or proportionate.
Yes, that's key. You can't just grab any metaphor. He explains how to apply it. If you want to praise something, elevate it, you use a metaphor drawn from the best things in the same class.
And the opposite if you want to criticize.
Right. To find fault, you pull from the worst things in that class. His examples are great for illustrating this.
Like the begging versus praying one.
Yeah. Calling begging praying elevates the act, makes it seem nobler, like seeking divine help. But if you call praying begging, you drag a sacred act down, make it sound desperate and demeaning.
Same action, totally different emotional framing based on the word choice.
Exactly. Or his example with actors. Calling them artistes highlights their skill. Calling them panderers of Dionysus. Well, technically they did perform in festivals for the god Dionysus, but panderers links them to something less respectable, baser. The metaphor completely shifts your judgment.
And this idea of framing, it's not just an ancient rhetorical trick, is it? It connects directly to modern psychology.
It really does. This is where the old wisdom sounds incredibly current. Quintilian, talking about the narratio, the part of the speech where you lay out the facts.
Okay, like setting the scene in a court case or a debate.
Right. He says the goal isn't just to inform, but also to move and to charm. And the way to have a really powerful impact is to paint such a vivid picture, a plausible picture of what occurred, that the audience feels like they were actually there.
Like making them eyewitnesses through words. How do you do that?
With specific, concrete, often sensory details. Quintilian mentions Marcus Caelius describing his political opponent Antonius passed out drunk, snoring, belching. It's not just stating facts, it's painting a visceral, disgusting image designed to provoke revulsion.
The facts might be accurate, but the framing with those specific ugly details is the persuasive move.
And that's precisely what modern behavioral science, like Daniel Kahneman's work on prospect theory, validates.
The lives saved versus lives lost experiment.
Exactly. It shows that our preferences about risk completely flip depending on how the exact same outcome is framed.
So if you talk about a policy saving 200 out of 600 people, people tend to choose that safer option. They become risk-averse because it's framed positively lives saved.
But if you frame the identical outcome as 400 people will die, suddenly people are more willing to gamble on a riskier option that might save everyone but could also kill everyone. They become risk-seeking because it's framed negatively, lives lost.
Wow. So the objective reality is the same, but the words used change our feelings and our choices.
Totally. Kahneman concluded our preferences are not reality-bound. They shift with the formulation. The ancient orator knew this intuitively, using vivid details. The modern psychologist proves it with experiments. It's the same fundamental insight into human cognition.
Okay, so we've got the need for technique, powerful metaphors, smart framing, good delivery. But as you said, these tools can be used for anything, good or bad. So how does a leader and influencer make sure they're using these potent techniques ethically?
And that brings us right back to character, to virtue, and back to Quintilian, who is just uncompromising on this point.
He really doubles down, doesn't he?
Absolutely. For him, skill without virtue is, well, it's not just insufficient. It disqualifies you from even being called an orator in the true sense. His conviction is crystal clear. Only the good man can truly be an orator.
That seems like an incredibly high bar, especially in politics or law where things get messy and adversarial. Is it even realistic?
Quintilian acknowledges the difficulty, but insists on it. He says the advocate, the person speaking for a cause, needs honor, which greed cannot corrupt, influence seduce, or fear dismay.
So integrity is paramount.
That's the foundation. He argues, look, even if a bad person somehow masters all the techniques of eloquence, you still wouldn't call them a true orator, just like you wouldn't call someone brave just because they happen to be physically strong. The underlying quality, the ethos, the character has to be there first.
And he gives a sign, doesn't he? A way to tell if someone has this true virtue.
Yes, it's about ego, really. The truly good orator prefers that the cause itself gets the praise, not them personally.
So they want the audience to focus on the issue, not on how brilliantly they spoke.
Exactly. Their goal is to make the case seem so inherently strong that it speaks for itself. If the audience walks away thinking, wow, what a great speech, the orator has, in a sense, failed. If they walk away thinking, wow, that's the right thing to do, I need to act, then they've succeeded. The speaker becomes almost invisible, serving the cause.
That level of humility and focus requires serious inner strength. And this idea of inner strength, of character being crucial for leadership, it echoes down through the centuries, though maybe with different flavors.
Definitely. You see figures wrestling with what kind of virtue is needed for public life. Take Theodore Roosevelt, for example. He had a very robust view.
He wasn't a fan of the timid good, was he?
Not at all. He saw people who were basically decent, but shied away from civic duty or political engagement out of fear or maybe sense of being too refined for the muck. He called them the most useless as well as the most despicable portion of society. Strong words.
So for Roosevelt, virtue wasn't passive goodness. It demanded action, toughness.
Yeah, he believed good citizens needed sufficiently coarse fiber and virile character. They had to be tough enough to take a hit in the political arena, an insult, an injury, and not just be hurt by it, but be angered enough to strike back. It's a very external, almost combative definition of the necessary character for leadership. Grit and fight.
Now contrast that with someone like Seneca, the Stoic philosopher. His focus seems much more internal.
Completely different emphasis. Seneca talks about cultivating an indomitable soul that can withstand suffering. He acknowledges that pain and decay are contrary to our physical nature. But, he argues, it is in accordance with nature for a person to endure these hardships while maintaining their inner composure, their integrity, their virtue.
So the victory isn't necessarily winning the external battle, like for Roosevelt, but maintaining your inner state regardless of the external chaos.
Precisely. Seneca even suggests that the struggle to endure to the bitter end the torments with your soul intact might be a greater good than simple joy or pleasure. For a leader, this implies character is forged in the fires of adversity by how you respond internally, not just by whether you win the fight. It's about maintaining internal order.
And that idea, maintaining internal order, connects really well to modern ideas about peak performance and just staying effective without burning out, doesn't it? Like the concept of flow.
Absolutely. Flow, that state Mihaly described, where you're completely absorbed in what you're doing, you lose track of time. It feels great, but it's also highly productive.
But getting into flow requires intense focus.
Autofocus,
Yeah.
a complete focusing of attention. And crucially, that focus does something important. It imposes order on your consciousness. It actively shuts out what Csikszentmihalyi called psychic entropy.
Psychic entropy sounds bad. What is it?
It's basically mental chaos. The internal noise worries about bills, relationship stress, anxieties, regrets, frustrations, unfulfilled desires. All that stuff clutters our mind most of the time.
So flow isn't just about feeling good. It's a functional state where you temporarily silence that internal chaos, freeing up mental bandwidth for the task at hand.
Exactly. You impose order on the self. And this leads directly to Stephen Covey's work, particularly his inside-out paradigm.
Covey argued that real, lasting change effectiveness, happiness, it never comes from the outside in, right? You can't just change your circumstances or manipulate others and expect deep results.
No. He insisted that any significant quantum change has to start from the most inside part of self. Your paradigms, how you see the world, your fundamental character, and your motives.
We always want to fix the other person, fix the system, change the external stuff. That's the outside-in trap.
Right. But it rarely works long-term. Covey's point is,
Yeah.
if you want things to be different out there, you have to be different in here first. Want more trust? Be more trustworthy. Want cooperation? Be more cooperative.
His challenge was simple, but so hard. Work on you, on B.
Yeah. It's the ultimate character-first model for influence. You lead by example, by embodying the principles you espouse. You have to be the change, not just demand it. Be the model, not the critic.
Okay, so we have the foundation of character, the ethos. We have the mastery of technique, the logos, the framing, the delivery. Now we need to talk about pathos actually moving people, stirring emotions to get them to act. Especially in tough times, two emotions seem absolutely critical: fear and hope.
And Aristotle, again, gives us a really useful definition of fear, especially for orators facing a crisis. He defines fear as a certain pain and agitation from the imagining of an impending evil of a destructive or painful sort.
The key there seems to be impending evil. Not just any evil, but one that feels close.
Exactly. He makes this crucial distinction. People only fear evils that seem so near as to be about to happen. Things that are far off don't really trigger that visceral fear response.
His example is death, right? Everyone knows they'll die eventually, but because it's usually perceived as distant.
They give it no thought in their daily lives. It doesn't motivate immediate action. So the orator's job, especially someone like Demosthenes warning Athens about Philip II of Macedon marching closer,
Is to make that threat feel immediate. To shorten the psychological distance, make the danger seem palpable right here, right now. Turn an abstract future threat into a clear and present danger demanding a response.
precisely. You have to make the impending feel truly imminent.
But you can't just terrify people into action indefinitely. Too much fear, or fear without an escape route, leads to paralysis, doesn't it? Panic or despair.
Right. Fear needs a counterbalance. And that counterbalance is hope. You need to show people not just what they're fighting against, but what they're fighting for. A vision of a possible positive future.
Brian Stevenson, the lawyer and activist, talks about this powerfully from his own experience, doesn't he?
He does. He says hope is basically essential for survival, especially for people in desperate situations. He tells a story about a client on death row who essentially said, "I can't go on without hope. Just promise you'll try something. Give me some hope to hold on to."
Wow. So hope isn't just a nice feeling, it's the fuel needed to endure the fear and the hardship of the present moment.
Absolutely. And you see leaders using this strategically in politics and social movements all the time. Harvey Milk running for office in San Francisco.
He explicitly said he was running to give hope, right? To fight the despair he saw in marginalized groups, young gay people feeling isolated, seniors feeling forgotten.
Yeah, his campaign was, in large part, about demonstrating that change was possible, giving people a tangible reason to believe they weren't powerless. Sometimes influence is simply lighting that spark of hope.
And JFK's inaugural address. That's another classic example, isn't it? Balancing the call for sacrifice with an underlying message of hope and collective purpose.
Definitely. That famous line, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." It's a masterstroke. It shifts the focus from passive receiving to active contribution. It frames sacrifice not as a burden, but as the pathway to national greatness and collective achievement. It injects purpose and hope into the call for effort.
So you've used fear to get attention, hope to provide motivation, but then you need to direct that energy somewhere concrete. People need to know what to do.
Exactly. And this is where someone like Russell Conwell and his incredibly famous lecture, Acres of Diamonds, comes in. Its message resonated for decades.
What was the core idea? It was about wealth, right? But with a twist.
Yeah, it was kind of revolutionary for its time because it reframed wealth acquisition. Conwell argued quite forcefully that it was not only okay, but actually a Christian and godly duty to get rich through honest means.
Okay, that's a strong take. What was the twist?
The twist was where you find those riches. He argued the huge mistake people make is looking far away, chasing opportunities elsewhere, when the real acres of diamonds are usually right under their noses in their own communities, in their current circumstance.
And he used stories to make this point, didn't he? Very vivid ones.
Unforgettable examples, like the professor who knew all about minerals but sold his farm to search for gold elsewhere.
Only for the new owner to find a massive chunk of native silver right by the gate.
Exactly. Wealth was literally sitting there, but he was too focused on far-off dreams to see it. Or the story about the diamond found in North Carolina, which geologists apparently said could only come from the most profitable mines, proving huge wealth could be found locally, not just in exotic lands.
So the message is, opportunity is usually close by if you have the eyes to see it and the willingness to act on it.
Precisely. And he connects this directly to business and even godliness. He says the foundation for success in business and the foundation for being godly are both the same precisely.
How does he illustrate that?
with a simple, practical example. The merchant who doesn't stock a basic jackknife even after 3 customers asks for one. Conwell says that merchant is either foolish or heading for failure.
Because by stocking the knife.
He performs a simple kindness, meets a local need, and gets a deserved reward profit. It's about serving the needs right in front of you. Mutual benefit through local service.
So how does this connect back to influence and rhetoric more broadly?
The implication is that effective leadership, effective rhetoric, often needs to direct people's energy towards tangible, local, achievable actions. Don't just talk about saving the world. Show people how they can improve their own street, their own business, their own community now.
He even had a take on political ambition, didn't he? Kind of downplaying it.
Yeah, he pushes back against the idea that true greatness lies in holding high office. He argues that in a republic, the office holder is just the servant of the people, meant to do what we tell them to do. Real greatness, he suggests, lies in seizing those local opportunities for service, for wealth creation, for making a tangible difference right where you are.
Now, this power of rhetoric, it's obviously not just for building businesses or winning wars. It's absolutely vital for driving social change, for demanding justice. And in those contexts, the speaker's character, their lived experience, seems inseparable from their message.
Oh, completely. You see this with incredible power in figures like Sojourner Truth. Here was someone who embodied, as the text says, the 2 most hated elements of humanity at that time, being black and being a woman.
Yet she commanded attention, faced down hostile crowds. Where did that power come from?
It seems to have come from this deep well of holy indignation, as she called it, a righteous anger fused with a profound dignity. She wasn't just arguing, she was testifying, compelling people to engage with knowledge and improvement, because she knew knowledge is power.
And she used that moral authority to challenge complacency, even within her own community, right? Asking older black men why fear kept them silent.
Yes, directly challenging them. Throw off your fearfulness and come forth in the name of the Lord. Her rhetoric wasn't just about persuading minds. It was about breaking the chains of fear that prevented action. The orator as catalyst, as emboldener.
Malcolm X, generations later, wielded a similar kind of power, but maybe with an even sharper edge, particularly against hypocrisy within the black community itself.
He was incredibly critical, wasn't he, of black professionals or leaders who he felt used their status just to get ahead personally, grab a few more crumbs, while claiming to represent the masses who were still suffering. He demanded authenticity.
But what's really interesting is his own evolution, isn't it? Later in his life, his perspective broadened.
Significantly. He came to believe that solving racism wasn't just a black problem. White people who genuinely wanted change couldn't just be passive allies. They had a responsibility to actively confront and combat the racism in other white people.
So again, it comes back to that principle of acting where you have the most immediate influence, facing the difficult truths in your own sphere.
Exactly. It mirrors Conwell's local opportunity idea, but applied to social justice. Deal with the issues you can directly impact.
This thread of authenticity, of confronting hard truths, both internal and external, leads us back to some of the modern thinkers on leadership and connection, like Brené Brown's work on vulnerability and shame.
Right. Brown's research really highlights how central connection is to our well-being and arguably to effective leadership. She defines shame not just as feeling bad about something you did, but as this deeper fear of disconnection.
The feeling that you're fundamentally flawed, unworthy of belonging.
Precisely. And vulnerability, she argues, is the antidote. It's necessary for building trust and genuine connection. But, and this is a crucial distinction she makes, vulnerability isn't just spilling your guts.
It can be misused, right, as a kind of armor.
Yes. Things like chronic oversharing, or what she calls floodlighting, hitting someone with way too much raw, unprocessed emotion that's not true vulnerability. It's often a defense mechanism that actually pushes people away, ironically confirming the underlying fear of not being worthy of connection.
So real effective vulnerability requires boundaries and self-awareness.
It requires boundaries, compassion for self and others, and having done some of that internal work, first aligning perfectly with Covey's inside-out idea again. True vulnerability is about showing up authentically, but appropriately. It's disciplined, not indulgent.
And bringing this all back to communication style. Even with strong character and deep insights, you still need to connect with your audience. Russell Conwell, the Acres of Diamonds guy, seemed to understand this instinctively.
He really did. Despite the potentially challenging message about duty and wealth, his delivery style was key to his success. He explicitly aimed to preach so simply that you will not think it preaching, but just that you are listening to a friend.
That approachability, that simplicity, it lowers defenses, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It builds rapport. That conversational, friendly ethos allows the big ideas, the calls to virtue, the powerful rhetorical techniques to actually land, to be considered rather than immediately rejected. It makes the summa vis dicendi, that greatest force of speaking, feel human and accessible. Hashtag tag outro.
Okay, so after digging through all this, from ancient Athens to modern psychology, what's the takeaway for you, the listener, trying to understand influence?
Well, we started with Demosthenes, didn't we?
Yeah.
The ultimate example of someone who achieved incredible skill through sheer painful effort.
Right, and what we've seen across the board, I think, is that real lasting influence seems to require this dual mastery. You need the skills you need to understand Aristotle's mechanics, Kahneman's insights on framing, how to perform effectively.
You absolutely do. The technique matters. But, and this is the constant refrain, that skill is kind of hollow or even dangerous unless it's anchored in something deeper.
Anchored in character. In Quintilian's Good Man, in Covey's inside-out work on yourself, and having that ethical foundation.
Exactly. The truly powerful oratory we've looked at, it's not just about clever words. It's about giving people the conviction they need, yes, but also the hope and, crucially, a clear, actionable vision so they can actually do something.
Whether that something is building wealth in their hometown, like Conwell urged, or fighting for freedom, or demanding social justice, like Sojourner Truth or Malcolm X.
The goal is to move people to meaningful action.
But the sources also leave us with this lingering tension, don't they? Quintilian champions Demosthenes as noble, but Demosthenes faced political ruin. Cicero is hailed as a master orator, but some historians question his courage at key moments.
And Conwell even seemed to suggest that maybe the greatest individuals shouldn't aim for high political office because it turns them into mere servants, potentially limiting their true impact compared to building things locally.
So it leaves us with a final, maybe provocative thought to chew on. Given this tension between public acclaim and private integrity, where does true, lasting effectiveness really lie?
Is it in becoming that outwardly perfect orator for the state, mastering all the techniques and seeking public validation, focusing on the external performance?
Or does real influence stem from building that foundational character first? Achieving that private internal victory, the self-mastery, the integrity, the clear purpose that Seneca or Covey talked about, which can sustain you regardless of whether you win the election, get the applause, or face down the crisis successfully.
Which comes first? The inner strength or the outer skill? Or perhaps, how do they have to develop together? That feels like the real deep dive, the one that continues long after any speech ends.
Definitely something to think about. Until next time on The Deep Dive.